The studio lights burned bright as millions tuned in for the highly anticipated live debate between Denzel Washington and Karoline Leavitt. The topic: Truth in American Politics. But what began as a civil conversation quickly spiraled into a verbal battleground. Karoline leaned forward, her tone smooth and practiced. Americans know who's fighting for them, and it's certainly not Hollywood elites lecturing from their mansions. Denzel's eyes narrowed, his calm demeanor cracking like glass under pressure. "You want to talk about elites, Karoline?" he fired back, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're sitting here defending a system that's been lying to the American people for decades. You smile on camera, twist the facts, and call it patriotism." The audience murmured. Even the moderator shifted uneasily. Karoline tried to keep her poise, flipping through her notes, but Denzel wasn't finished. "I've seen this game before," he continued, his tone rising. "Politicians pretending to care while families lose homes, while veterans sleep on sidewalks. You sell slogans, not solutions." Karoline's confident smile wavered for a second, then returned, colder this time. "That's easy for you to say, Denzel. You make millions pretending to fix the world on screen. We're out here doing the real work." The tension was electric. Denzel leaned closer to the mic, his voice low but powerful. "You're lying to the American people, Karoline," he said, each word echoing through the studio. The crowd gasped. They knew this was no longer just a debate. It was war. Within minutes, clips of Denzel's fiery words flooded every corner of the internet. The hashtag Denzel vs. Karoline shot to #1 on X, Twitter, as users replayed the moment over and over, Denzel leaning in, eyes blazing, declaring, "You're lying to the American people." Mainstream media scrambled to spin the fallout. Conservative commentators praised Karoline for standing strong against Hollywood arrogance, while progressive voices hailed Denzel as the voice of moral truth in a sea of corruption. Cable news anchors dissected every word, every breath, every glare exchanged between them. Back in the studio, the atmosphere was radioactive. The moderator tried to regain control, but the audience fed off the energy. A woman in the front row shouted, "Tell the truth, Karoline." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half booing. Karoline raised her hand for silence. "You call me a liar," she said, steady but trembling. "But I stand with working Americans, not actors who play heroes." Denzel's reply was calm, deliberate, devastating. "You don't stand with them," he said softly. "You stand on them, to climb higher, to build your brand, to sell your image as the voice of the people. But the people are done being props in your show." The studio went still. Cameras zoomed in on Karoline's face, a mix of anger and shock. Behind the scenes, producers exchanged frantic looks. They had planned a debate. What they got was a reckoning. By midnight, clips were on every news outlet, every feed, every phone. The nation wasn't just watching, it was choosing sides. By the next morning, the debate had turned into a national wildfire. Every talk show, every podcast, every street corner conversation buzzed with the same question: was Denzel right, or had he gone too far? Clips of the confrontation looped endlessly on social media, Denzel's steady, unflinching tone against Karoline's defensive posture. Memes appeared within hours. Some crowned Denzel the people's truth teller, others mocked him as Hollywood's preacher. Outside news studios in New York and Los Angeles, protesters gathered. One group held signs reading, "Truth over spin," while another waved banners saying, "Actors aren't leaders." The line between politics and performance had blurred so completely that no one could tell where the stage ended and real life began. Karoline went live that afternoon on a conservative network. Her hair was perfectly styled, her voice composed. "This isn't about me or him," she said. "It's about the American dream, the one elites think they can shame out of existence." But Denzel had already posted his own response, a single video shot from his home, no studio lights, no script. "I've seen too many politicians use faith, patriotism, and fear like tools," he said. "If telling the truth sounds like rage, maybe that says more about the lie than the man." The clip went nuclear. Millions watched within hours. Celebrities reposted it. Journalists dissected every phrase. Even rival politicians weighed in, some condemning his tone, others quietly thanking him for saying what they couldn't. And somewhere between trending hashtags and televised outrage, America paused, because for the first time in a long time, someone had said exactly what millions were thinking. By day 2, the story had escaped the confines of entertainment and stormed into Washington. The White House press room was packed, flashes burst like lightning as a reporter shouted, "Does the administration have a comment on Denzel Washington's remarks?" The press secretary dodged the question with a strained smile, but the hesitation said enough. Meanwhile, Karoline's team scrambled to contain the fallout. Her advisors flooded social media with talking points, spinning Denzel's explosion as a Hollywood tantrum. Yet their efforts backfired. The more they tried to control the narrative, the more clips of Denzel's fiery words resurfaced, unedited, raw, and brutally sincere. Cable news hosts couldn't resist the spectacle. CNN called it the showdown of the year. Fox framed it as a celebrity's crusade against conservative truth. By midnight, hashtags like #DenzelSpeaks and #CarolineCollapse trended simultaneously. Denzel, however, stayed quiet. When approached by paparazzi, he simply said, "If your truth makes people uncomfortable, you're doing something right." That line became an instant quote, printed on t-shirts, posters, and tweets by millions who felt unseen by the system. Karoline finally broke her silence in a late-night interview. Her tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "He can shout all he wants," she said. "But America needs builders, not actors." The next morning, Denzel replied with just 4 words on X, formerly Twitter. "Actors build empathy. Remember." The post shattered the internet. It wasn't just a feud anymore, it had become a symbol of a deeper war between truth and image, empathy and politics, silence and courage. The network couldn't resist the rating storm. 2 days later, they brought Denzel and Karoline back for a live, clarification debate. The lights were harsh, the audience silent, and the moderator looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Cameras zoomed in as Denzel leaned forward, calm but razor-sharp. Karoline opened first, rehearsed, polished. "Look, I respect Mr. Washington's passion," she began, flashing her usual campaign smile. "But emotional outbursts don't solve national crises. We need leadership grounded in facts, not feelings." Denzel didn't blink. "Facts," he repeated, his voice low but thunderous. "Fact, families can't afford groceries. Fact, your party shut down funding for millions while blaming everyone else. Fact, you're on this stage pretending empathy is weakness." The studio fell dead quiet. Karoline tried to cut in, but he raised a finger. "You say I'm emotional, damn right I am. Because people are suffering while politicians rehearse their lines." His voice climbed with every word. "You can't govern with a heart made of marble." Karoline shot back, "And you can't fix America by yelling from a studio." That line might have saved her, until Denzel smiled. "Then why does my yelling reach more people than your policies?" The audience gasped. Even the moderator froze for a beat too long. The control room director whispered into his headset, "Keep it rolling." Karoline's expression cracked, a flash of anger betraying the polished mask. "You're just another actor chasing applause," she hissed. Denzel leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper, the kind that burns louder than any shout. "I don't need applause. I need accountability." The crowd erupted. Twitter went nuclear. Within minutes, clips flooded every corner of social media. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a reckoning, and the world was watching. The fallout was instant. Within hours, every major network, podcast, and social media feed was ablaze with one question: did Denzel just destroy Karoline Leavitt's career on live TV? Hashtags like #Denzel vs. Karoline and #TruthOverspin trended for 72 hours straight. Clips of the exchange flooded TikTok and YouTube, slowed down, remixed, captioned, dissected. Political analysts tried to spin it. Conservative hosts painted Denzel as an out-of-touch Hollywood elitist. Liberal pundits hailed him as a voice of moral clarity in an age of political deception. But the real impact wasn't on TV, it was on the streets. In coffee shops, classrooms, and online forums, people replayed his words, "You can't govern with a heart made of marble." For millions, that line hit home. Veterans, single mothers, and laid-off workers began sharing their stories, tagging Denzel in solidarity. Overnight, he became more than an actor, he became a symbol of conscience, a reminder that integrity still had a voice. Karoline's campaign team scrambled to contain the damage. Leaks surfaced that her advisors urged her to issue an apology or at least acknowledge Denzel's concerns. But instead, she doubled down, tweeting, "If standing for strong leadership makes me the villain, then so be it." The tweet backfired spectacularly. Within minutes, parody accounts and viral memes rebranded her as Queen of Denial. Meanwhile, Denzel refused to give interviews. When asked by reporters if he planned to capitalize on the viral moment, he simply replied, "Truth isn't a brand. It's a burden. You either carry it, or it crushes you." That quote would dominate headlines the next morning. Talk shows dissected it, universities debated it, and politicians feared it. Because in a world where every word is a weapon, Denzel had just launched one that couldn't be silenced, a truth bomb that kept echoing long after the cameras stopped rolling. By sunrise, Washington was in full panic mode. Cable networks looped the Denzel-Karoline clash as if it were breaking news from the Oval Office. Every political strategist in D.C. had the same question: what if the actor struck a nerve the administration can't ignore? Inside the White House, aides exchanged tense glances as press secretary briefings turned chaotic. Reporters demanded to know whether President Trump, still the most polarizing voice in politics, would respond to Denzel's statements about truth, morality, and power. Instead of silence, a statement dropped like a thunderclap. Denzel Washington doesn't speak for the American people. He speaks for Hollywood. That single sentence ignited an inferno. Denzel supporters flooded social media, accusing the White House of dismissing real voices and weaponizing celebrity backlash. Late-night hosts mocked the response, while political analysts dissected every syllable. Karoline, cornered but defiant, went on a conservative talk show claiming she'd been ambushed by a rehearsed performance. Yet the footage told a different story: the raw emotion in Denzel's eyes, the tremor in her voice when he asked, "Do you even hear the people you claim to represent?" The next day, the New York Times published an op-ed titled, "When Hollywood Speaks Truth and Washington Covers Its Ears." It was signed by veterans, teachers, and blue-collar workers, not actors. The piece praised Denzel for cutting through a political circus fueled by ego and fear. Meanwhile, a rally erupted outside the Capitol. Protesters held signs reading, "No paychecks, no excuses," and "Truth over spin." Denzel hadn't organized it, but his words had. By the end of the week, one thing was undeniable: this wasn't about a debate anymore. It had become a movement, one that blurred the line between celebrity and citizen, stage and state. Outside the White House gates, the air was electric. Reporters shouted over each other, their microphones pointed toward a single black SUV rolling to a stop. The door opened, and out stepped Denzel Washington. No entourage, no sunglasses, no Hollywood veneer. Just a man walking straight into the lion's den. Cameras flashed wildly. "Mr. Washington. Are you here to meet the president?" someone yelled. Denzel didn't answer. He just looked ahead, jaw tight, eyes burning with quiet conviction. Inside, the press secretary scrambled, whispering urgently into her earpiece, "He's actually here. He just walked up." Within minutes, every network cut to live coverage. Karoline Leavitt appeared on Fox, her voice sharp, "This is political theater. Denzel's trying to hijack a serious issue for fame." But Americans weren't buying it. Polls lit up. Comments flooded in. Finally, someone's standing up to these lies. We need more people like Denzel, fearless and real. In a backroom meeting, President Trump reportedly slammed his fist on the table. He wants to talk. Fine. Let him in. I don't back down from actors. Advisors warned against it. They said Denzel's moral authority would only amplify the storm. But Trump, never one to avoid a camera, saw an opportunity to dominate the narrative. As Denzel entered the West Wing, tension radiated through every hallway. Staffers froze, phones buzzing with push alerts. Washington meets Washington. Inside the Oval Office, Trump stood behind his desk, arms folded. Denzel paused, then stepped forward. "Mr. President," he said, his voice steady, "you can't dismiss truth as a performance." Trump leaned in. "And you can't mistake a stage for a country." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was explosive. The kind of silence that precedes headlines. The Oval Office had never felt smaller. Two towering presences, one born of power, the other of principle, now stood face to face. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't matter. Every word would soon echo far beyond those walls. Trump leaned on his desk, the presidential seal glinting beneath his hands. "You walk in here acting like you speak for America," he said, his tone equal parts command and challenge. "You make movies, Denzel. I make history." Denzel didn't flinch. "History?" he shot back. "History isn't about power, it's about people. And right now, those people are starving while politicians argue over who gets the credit." The room went still. Even the Secret Service agents by the door shifted uncomfortably. Trump smirked, a flash of defiance cutting through the tension. "You think you understand Washington? You're in Hollywood, not D.C. "That's where you're wrong," Denzel replied, his voice calm but cutting. "Hollywood shows fiction. He gestured around the Oval Office, "this is supposed to be reality. But it's turned into a show where truth dies every day for ratings." Trump slammed a hand on the desk. "You're out of line. And you're out of touch," Denzel shot back, stepping forward. "You claim to fight for America, but you only fight for applause. The people out there, the real America, they're paying the price while you play the lead role in your own drama." For a heartbeat, Trump said nothing. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Then, in a low growl, he said, "You just made an enemy out of the most powerful man in the world." Denzel met his gaze. "Then maybe it's time the world remembered who really holds the power, the people." Outside, aides rushed to brief the press. Inside, two visions of America stood locked in silence, one fueled by ego, the other by conscience. The next morning, the world woke up to chaos. Every major network looped the same clip: Denzel Washington, standing in the White House press room, his voice steady, his eyes burning. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, "Denzel challenges the president, truth doesn't need permission." He hadn't planned to speak, but silence, he decided, was no longer an option. "America," he began, "isn't a brand. It's a promise, one we're breaking every time truth becomes negotiable." The room of journalists, usually buzzing, was frozen. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before catching their next breath. Somewhere upstairs, Trump watched the broadcast. His jaw clenched as Denzel's words rippled across the country. "You don't lecture the President of the United States," he muttered under his breath. "You don't outshine me." But it was too late. Denzel's speech was already trending across every platform. Hashtags like #TruthOverPower and #Denzel vs. Trump flooded social media. Young people were quoting his line, "Truth doesn't need permission," on protest signs outside the Capitol. Later that night, Denzel sat alone in a quiet hotel room overlooking the Washington skyline. The phone buzzed non-stop with interview requests, invitations, and threats. He ignored them all. Instead, he whispered to himself, if telling the truth makes me the enemy, then maybe America needs more enemies. Meanwhile, Trump's advisors scrambled to regain control of the narrative. One aide asked, "Sir, should we respond?" Trump turned to the window, his reflection hard and silent. "No," he said finally. "You don't wrestle with an actor, you rewrite the script." But this time, the script wasn't his. It belonged to the people, and to the man who dared to speak when everyone else stayed quiet.